What's up guys, OJ here, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of great information. But before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And we're starting off with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and why this game might be one of the most important games as Nintendo heads into the, I would say, ending phase or ending acts of the Nintendo Switch. Now, a couple years ago, I talked about how Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is one of the most important games for the Nintendo Switch, and honestly, it was. And we're talking about, for a franchise-wise, what Nintendo does going forward, how they shape their business, what they put money into. Now, of course, these games aren't as important as, let's say, Mario or Zelda. Those are the games that kind of carry the system. But for variety's sake and for making sure that Nintendo doesn't fall back into where they were before in the Wii era, where Xenoblade Chronicles, Nintendo of America didn't even want to publish that game, where stuff like The Last Story don't want to publish. We don't get that same variety that we get. I think that Xenoblade, the original on the Wii, was a landmark game because of how well it did, despite the piracy that it had and despite all the issues 2 years after it came out in Japan. The fact that people responded that way, and now we have multiple characters from the Xenoblade franchise in Super Smash Bros. In that short of a time period, just goes to show you that yes, we need that variety, and how these games do is very important for that RPG, for that variety, and for me at least, having the Nintendo Switch be my favorite Nintendo system of all time. Honestly, without the Xenoblade games, I don't think it's quite there at that point, although there's still a lot of great games outside of that. So to me, I think that going forward, especially with that, what was it, $1 billion investment into Nintendo's first party and resources, which include Monolith Soft, obviously, they're going to be looking very closely at Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because this is the first time since Xenoblade Chronicles X that they really invested a large sum of money into Xenoblade again, because the last time was Xenoblade Chronicles X, which was, what was that, more than 6 years ago at this point, 2015. So we're looking at 6+ years ago. Well, that was the launch. Obviously they were investing in it before that, but you guys understand what I'm trying to say here. So Nintendo's definitely looking at this and saying, okay, well, are we going to continue with this, or there's going to be something else that they're going to do? How much are they going to get? Honestly, if this game blows up to the point where it can sell 3 million, 4 million based on how it does, I think that it can dramatically change the angle that Nintendo does with Monolith Soft and what games that we get going forward on the Nintendo Switch 2. So I think that this is a very important game for the franchise and also for Nintendo to see exactly where they are at this point. It's time to make some strides with Xenoblade. They've been pretty much upping their sales each time. There was a little bit of a dip with Xenoblade Chronicles X, but that's only because the game was on the Wii U and the install base wasn't as big as you would have liked. But considering the install base and the fact that that game sold around 1 million, I think it was right underneath it or right at 1 million, that's actually pretty good for an RPG like that. Then of course we know the rest with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and how that game sold over 2 million copies. So I think that, will this game make that next jump? Will we see that fabled 3 million units plus? I think it's very possible for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that we do get that, and I'm really hoping that is the case because I want to see more Xenoblade. I want to see more investments in Monolith Soft projects. I want to see them get their games up to the same level or status or fanfare or graphical capabilities as the Final Fantasies out there, as the Kingdom Hearts out there. I think that the franchise has that type of potential to be that popular. However, you got to start from somewhere, and through more games and more publicity, you can build that IP up to where you want to get it. But some people think that, oh, you just release a game, then it's just going to be instantly popular. Heck, if you look at The Legend of Zelda, right? I mean, that's always been a popular franchise, but it wasn't until Breath of the Wild, multiple decades later, that Legend of Zelda really became that massive franchise, 20+ million selling units type of franchise, because Nintendo's had systems that have sold as well as the Nintendo Switch. Let's just be real here. I mean, there's been a number of systems that have sold well when it comes to their portables and their home consoles. The Wii, the DS, the Game Boy, the GBA didn't quite sell as well, but there was still 80 million plus people on there. So it's not like Zelda hasn't had the opportunities to sell this much. but it wasn't until what they did and how they kept on reinventing it till it got to where it got to. So I think that Xenoblade Chronicles, I'm not saying it's going to get to that point, I'm just saying that it does take time to build these franchises over the course of decades, because Xenoblade's really only about a decade old. To be honest, if you talk about like from the American release of the game, it's about a decade old. 12 years if you count the Japanese release of the game. So it's not like it's a really old franchise like Mario or like Zelda or even like Pokemon, for example. So I think that going forward, this is going to be important for Nintendo. This game is going to have to sell pretty well, and I think that Monolith Soft is going to be in such a better position going forward, because the Switch is literally the perfect system for Xenoblade games. So we'll see what happens going forward. We'll see what Nintendo does going forward, but I'm very excited for the future and how this is actually going to affect Monolith Soft and their game development going forward. So what are your thoughts on this when it comes to Xenoblade Chronicles, Monolith Soft, and everything that I said here? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the next topic here, we've got some really good news for Chrono Cross on the Nintendo Switch. Yes, there will be a physical release in Asia, and guess what, boys and girls? It's got English support. Let's freaking go. So Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers Edition, will largely be a digital-only release when it hits the Nintendo Switch next month. Nintendo everything rights, but a physical version has now been confirmed in one region. The remastered version of the classic RPG will have a boxed copy in Asia. Square Enix has confirmed supported languages include English, Japanese, Spanish, French, German, and Italian. Now here's a little bit more information about this game for those who don't know what Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers Edition, is all about, and why this game is actually really important to get another game that's my favorite game of all time with Chrono Trigger. So the 3D models have been upgraded to HD, new illustrations have been added, and all kinds of new features are now included. Additionally, the game that formed the bedrock of the story, Radical Dreamers, is included in this edition. Chrono Cross is an RPG that transcends time and space, unfolding across two interlinked parallel worlds. With over 40 party members to meet, people and dimensions will intertwine in this epic drama about the planet itself. Now here's the new features of the remastered edition: 3D models converted to HD, refined character illustrations, higher quality background music, switch enemy encounters on or off, background filter feature, battle enhancement features to make combat easier, auto battle function, switch between imitation pixel font and HD font, change screen resolution. Now also, the Radical Dreamers, got some more information on this too, was released in 1996 as a standalone game that has not been easily accessible for play in recent years. Players can experience the story that went on to become the basis for Chrono Cross in an audio novel format. Here, an alternate story of Radical Dreamers, a group of three thieves, Surge, Kid, and Magil, unfolds in a parallel world. You can switch between the new and old versions of the 3D models and illustrations. The 3D models, illustrations, font, and background filters cannot be toggled separately. They will be all switched together. Now, the physical version of Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers Edition for the Nintendo Switch will be releasing in Asia on April 26, 2022. Pre-orders should be opening very soon, and of course, I'll give you guys more information when that does happen. So once again, very happy about this. I think this is going to be really good. I like Chrono Cross, but it definitely needed a remaster, and I'm hoping that this actually leads to Square Enix being however confident in getting Chrono Trigger back on the systems, because they have to have a plan. There's no way that you release Chrono Cross and remaster it and not have some type of plan for Chrono Trigger. So there's something there, and I think that if this game does well, maybe we'll get an enhanced version of that plan or the backup version of that plan. I'm not really sure what they plan on doing, but something has to give, because Chrono Trigger got an update 4 years after the release on PC. It got an update to add a bunch of remaster type features. So I'm guessing that there is a remaster in the works, and they're kind of looking at how things do when it comes to the Chrono franchise in America and how it sells and the interest and how much coverage it gets. So I'm going to be buying this game digital. I'm going to be buying this game physical. I'm going to be covering it on the channel as well, like I'm doing right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this. But what are your thoughts on Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers edition, getting physical in Asia? You guys plan on importing that from PlayAsia or from other means? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, now moving on to the next topic here, guys. Splatoon 3 is fastly rising up the most anticipated charts in Japan on the Famitsu. So Famitsu, they do poll their readers every single week or so, and check out what people are excited about on the gaming landscape. You got a lot of really dope games here, good taste over there in Japan. So I wanted to go over the top 10 games, and of course, if you want the top 30, you can check out the link in the description. So starting in at number 10, a game that we almost know nothing about, Pragmata. 279 votes on there. Number 9, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. That game's coming out pretty soon here this summer. 281 votes. Number 8, a game that I'm very hyped about on the Nintendo Switch, Live Alive, with 350 votes. Number 7, the game that we just talked about at the beginning of this video, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 with 355 votes. Number 6, Dragon Quest X Offline with 456 votes. And I'm just like jealous of the Japanese gamers who just get to enjoy Dragon Quest X for how long now? More than a decade at this point, while us lowly Americans and Westerners do not. So congratulations to Japan on that one. Now, number 5 on the Nintendo Switch, Bayonetta 3 with 519 votes. Always good to see Bayo rocking it up there. Number 4, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 at 523 votes. Number 3, which just launched recently, this was before that, right? The votes were cast from March 10th to March 16th, and that is Kirby and the Forgotten Land at 530 votes. So I think that that game is going to have a good debut opening in the Famitsu sales charts. People are excited for it. The pre-order charts seem pretty well on it. It was pretty good on Japan when it comes to the eShop charts, so I think that game is going to do really well. A lot better than maybe some people thought that it was going to do. Number 2 is the game that we're all talking about here, Splatoon 3, Rising Up. So very good there, second spot. Then of course at number 1, Final Fantasy 16. People are excited about that, but I don't know when that game is coming. But it's really good to see a lot of these games here because I'm excited for Breath of the Wild 2, Splatoon 3. Obviously, Kirby's been great. Bayonetta's awesome. I can't wait to play that game. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Live Alive, Monster Hunter Rise. It just keeps going. A lot of great games across the board, whether you're on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, doesn't really matter at this point. Gaming is peaking in 2022. It's already been a loud first 3 months or so of the year, man. So I think it's even gonna just keep getting better and better as we go along here. But what are your thoughts on this with Splatoon 3 holding in at that number 2 spot? And what other games are you excited about in this top 10? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the final topic, I want to describe something that I've been talking about for forever on here when it comes to Triangle Strategy's name. Now, I didn't need the producer to tell me why they picked the name of Triangle Strategy. To me, it was very apparent if you play the Team Asano games why they picked the names. As soon as you see the gameplay, you're like, okay, that's the theme, that's what they're going for, that's what it is. So they're gonna put some type of obtuse or weird name to explore or to describe the gameplay in the title of the game. And now we actually have the confirmation from the producer of Triangle Strategy how they decided the name, because so many people said that the name was bad online, and I'm like, no, it's not bad. It just falls in the same line as Bravely Default, Octopath Traveler. It's the same stuff. People said the same thing with Octopath Traveler, and that's a bad name. And it's like, no, it's a unique name that makes it stand out as a more AA unique HD 2D type of game. They need to continue this. Don't make it like, you know, strategy game tactic or something like that. You know, don't make it something boring or whatever, or Norzelia strategy. Make it something unique so people remember it and that conversation is being talked about and it falls in line with the other HD 2D Team Asano type of games, those RPGs out there. So I wasn't upset at that. But let's talk about this because the producer had this to say. Quote, "We usually put a lot of thought into determining the game's titles. One of the things that we make sure that we think about is if the player can imagine what kind of game it is based on the title. When you look at Triangle Strategy, a triangle is 3 angles and then strategy. So it's a strategy game that you play from 3 angles. Octopath Traveler is also a name kind of from that perspective. Octo is 8 paths that you're traveling. we wanted to see what the reactions would be like behind Project Triangle Strategy. So having project at the start of the name would give us a little bit of room to be able to change the name, but it ended up resonating with the audience, so we thought we'd keep the Triangle Strategy name. Another process that we go through when naming games is there's a native English speaker on our team. So I talk to them when we're naming the title. And one of the points we talk about is if the name is weird or unique as Bravely Default and Octopath Travelers. So this is awesome to see, guys, because I feel that they need to continue that. That's what makes the Team Asano games the Team Asano games, making that unique or weird or interesting type of name to describe the gameplay that's there. And I had some people tell me, oh, well, it's going to cause them sales, or no, they need to change it to be something different, or I'm not going to pay attention. And that's ridiculous. If you don't like the game or whatever the case is, or if you're not going to pay attention because of the name, you won't really interested in Team Asano games or like Team Asano games in the first place. You're looking at it from a name and saying, okay, well, I'm going to buy it or not based off that. That's ridiculous. But Triangle Strategy obviously proved those people wrong, because the game sold 800,000 units in like 2 weeks or something like that, you know? So they did really well. It's going to be a million seller, just like all the other Team Asano games out there on the Nintendo Switch. So I'm looking forward to more from this company. Team Asano, they're fantastic. I think that Triangle Strategy is their best game yet out of all the Team Asano games. Bravely Default, all the different games that I've played from them, I think that Triangle Strategy is the best one by far, and the one that I put the most time into, 100+ hours into that game. So I'm very excited what they do next, and I hope that we get a sequel or a follow-up to Triangle Strategy at some point, because it really is that good with the endings and with the combat and everything. I love that game. So what are your thoughts on this when it comes to Triangle Strategy, the names, and everything else that I discussed here in this video? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.